The alien warship Terran Vortex moved silently through the cold darkness of deep space. It was massive, with metal corridors stretching for miles. Thousands of alien soldiers, engineers, and scientists worked inside. They thought their ship was the safest place in the galaxy. They were wrong. In the lower level of the ship, where no one ever went anymore, a red light started to blink, soft at first, then stronger. A robotic voice spoke calmly. Cryo Unit 9. Activation detected. Security Officer Riesel frowned. He was tall, with dark green skin and sharp eyes. His long claws tapped on the control panel. Impossible, he muttered. That chamber hasn't opened in 300 cycles. He called his commander, Vertok, a cruel and powerful leader of the alien empire. Sir, we have movement in the forbidden sector. Cryo Unit 9 is powering up. There was a long silence. Then, Vertok responded coldly. Send a team. Open it. If it's alive, bring it to the lab. If it resists, kill it. 3 armored guards marched toward the chamber. The hallway was old. Dust floated in the air. Warning signs and broken human language covered the walls. Do not open. Biohazard. Contain at all costs. The lead guard laughed. Humans, always so dramatic. They reached the chamber door. It hissed open slowly. Inside, a thick fog spilled out, and the freezing air stung their skin. In the center stood a tall cryo-pod covered in frost. A single human lay inside, eyes closed, body strong, scarred, frozen in time. One of the guards tapped the screen. Vital stable. Cryo seal breaking now. Then the human's eyes opened. They were bright blue, but empty, cold, like a storm was hidden behind them. Before anyone could speak, the pod popped open with a loud hiss. The man stepped out, slow but steady. His muscles flexed. His breath was calm, his movements precise. Identify yourself, shouted a guard. The man didn't answer. He simply looked around the room. Then, he spoke just 3 words in a deep, steady voice. Where am I? The guards raised their weapons. On board the Terran Vortex. You are now a prisoner of the Overak Empire. Move, human. The man tilted his head. Overak Empire? Yes. Now walk. He took a step forward, but not toward the guards. Toward the wall. He placed his hand on it, feeling the vibration. One of the guards shouted again. Now, the human looked over his shoulder. You should not have woken me. Suddenly, he moved, too fast to see. A loud crack echoed in the chamber. One guard flew across the room and slammed into the wall. Another tried to fire his weapon, but the man twisted his arm and threw him to the ground. The third ran for the door but didn't make it. The human was already there, blocking the way. In less than 5 seconds, all 3 guards were unconscious. The man stood in the silence, breathing slowly. He picked up a small device from the guard's belt and pressed it to his temple. A soft beep followed. A robotic voice spoke again. Welcome, Captain Darius Kane. Ghost Unit 7. Clearance level, Red 0. Darius Kane. That was his name. He looked at his reflection in a metal panel. A soldier's face, tired but strong. His memory was foggy, but flashes returned. War, fire, earth, screaming. He whispered to himself. They told me to sleep until it was over. His fingers clenched into fists. But it's not over. Up in the control room, alarms began to flash. Vertok watched the screen with disbelief. 3 guards, taken down. Already. Another officer shouted, Sir, the human is loose in the ship. He's armed, full. Vertok roared. You've just released a ghost soldier. That unit was shut down because even humans feared them. Riesel's voice shook. Why would we even keep such a man frozen on our ship? Vertok's face was hard. To remind the galaxy that we won, that we broke them. He was a trophy, nothing more. Suddenly, the screens flickered, static. Then a video feed came on. Darius Kane was looking directly at the camera, his face cold, his eyes burning. He said just one thing. You should have left me frozen. Then the screen went black. In the next moment, the power in Sector 9 went out. Doors slammed shut, and somewhere in the walls, a low hum began to grow, the sound of something moving, hunting, silent. Precise. Cryo Unit 9 was open, and the war was about to begin again. All over the warship Terran Vortex, fear began to grow like a sickness. It was strange. Aliens who had never feared anyone were suddenly walking faster in the halls. Their hands trembled while holding weapons. Their voices dropped to whispers. No one said it out loud, but they all knew the human was loose. Security teams searched every level. Drones scanned walls and ceilings. Orders screamed from loudspeakers in every language of the Ovrak Empire. Find him, dead or alive. But there was no sign of him. He was not in the cells, not in the labs, not in the hangar. It was like he had vanished into thin air, except he hadn't. Darius Kane was crawling through the vents. He moved like smoke, silent, invisible, unstoppable. He remembered this kind of place. He had trained in war bunkers deeper than this ship. Tight spaces, zero light, pressure-filled air. This was home. His body was scarred, but his mind was sharper than ever. Every vibration in the metal told him where the guards were. Every faint light told him how far he was from the next room. His heart beat slow and steady, calm like a machine. But he wasn't a machine. He was a man who had lost everything. In the command room, Vertok watched the map of his ship. Red dots showed patrols, blue lights showed sealed doors. But in the center of it all was a dead zone sector for B, a place the human had blacked out completely. Vertok slammed his fist on the console. What is in Sector for B? Riesel. Check the logs. His face turned pale. Sir, it's the genetics lab. The one where we store human test subjects. Silence fell over the command room. VOR single quotes DAAK growled. Then that's where he's going. Inside the vents, Darius paused. He stared through the small metal holes into a bright white room. Rows of glass pods, humans inside, all asleep. Some young, some old. A few were missing limbs. Some had machines growing from their spines. Others looked peaceful, but none were free. Experiments. Darius clenched his jaw. His hand trembled. These were his people. He opened the vent cover and dropped silently into the lab. The alien doctors turned and froze in fear. Please, one begged. We only follow orders. Darius said nothing. He didn't need to. His stare was enough. Cold, empty, heavy with pain. One of the doctors tried to press a button on the wall. Darius moved faster than thought, grabbing his wrist and twisting it with a sharp snap. The other dropped to his knees. Darius stepped over him, ignoring the pleas. He walked toward one of the pods. Inside was a little girl, no older than 10. Her skin was pale. Wires connected her to machines, but her face, it was human. Suddenly, her eyes opened. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply looked at him and whispered, "You came back." Darius blinked. "Do you know me?" She shook her head. "No, but they told us one day a ghost would come, a man in black, and he would take us home for the first time in years." Darius Kane's voice softened. "What's your name?" "Zara." "Come with me, Zara." He broke the glass with his bare hands and lifted her out. She was light to light. Her body had been weakened by testing, but her eyes were strong, just like his. Meanwhile, the command room went dark. A new voice spoke from the speakers. "Calm, human. Your empire ends tonight." The crew looked around in panic. The screens were hijacked. One by one, video feeds showed broken security teams, disabled power grids, silent halls. On one feed, they saw Zara holding Darius's hand. Vertok's face twisted in rage. "Kill them. Burn the whole level if you must." But when the strike team reached the lab, it was empty. In the lower vents, Darius and Zara crawled slowly. She whispered, "Are you really a ghost?" He smiled faintly. "Once. Maybe. Now, I'm just a father looking for peace." Zara held his hand tighter. "Then let's go give them a war." Behind them, fires broke out in the labs. Systems crashed. Lights failed. Chaos grew. And above all the noise, one warning kept repeating across the ship's computer. "Warning, ghost unit, presence detected." But it was too late. The ghost wasn't just present. He was everywhere. The fire from the genetics lab spread quickly, lighting up the dark halls of the lower decks. Smoke hissed through the air vents. Red emergency lights flickered above. But the alarms were already silent, disabled by Darius Kane himself. He didn't need noise to warn them. He was the warning. Darius and Zara moved carefully through the emergency tunnel system. She held his hand tightly, never once complaining. Despite her small body, despite the pain in her legs from years of being trapped in that pod, she never slowed down. Darius had seen soldiers fall from exhaustion. Zara was stronger. They reached an old section of the ship, Sector XJO. It was shut down decades ago. The walls were cracked. Wiring exposed. Signs in alien language warned. Biotech classified. Do not enter. Darius stopped. Something about this area felt wrong. Zara, he said quietly, wait here. She nodded and leaned against the wall. Breathing softly, Darius stepped forward, his instincts sharp. The door in front of him was sealed with triple lock security. He connected a stolen clearance chip to the console. It sparked, then clicked open. The door slid aside slowly, revealing horror. Inside were rows of giant glass tanks, each one holding a hybrid creature part human, part machine, part alien, eyes floating in green liquid, bodies twisted unnaturally, mouths sewn shut, limbs cut off and replaced with alien tech. Darius felt his heart pound. This wasn't just war. This was butchery. Screens on the wall showed files. Human names, birthplaces, DNA codes. They weren't prisoners. They were blueprints. He stepped closer to a large central tube. It held a fully formed human figure, with implants growing directly from the spine. Its face was still, until it opened its eyes. They were identical to Darius's. Impossible, he whispered. A robotic voice spoke from the screen above. Project Victor 13, created using preserved ghost uni DNA, enhanced for strength, obedience, and biological memory override. Estimated combat readiness, 97%. The clone inside looked directly at Darius, calm, soulless, empty. But then, it smiled. Darius stepped back. The screen flashed again. Victor 13. Primary target original host. Captain Darius Kane. Suddenly, alarms returned. Sirens blared. The tank hissed. Locks disengaged. They had activated the clone. Zara heard the alarm and ran inside. Darius. He grabbed her hand and pulled her behind him. The tank was opening. Steam poured out. The clone stepped onto the floor. It looked exactly like Darius, but with skin paler, muscles bigger, eyes colder. I am the better version, it said calmly. You are old, weak, full of failure. Darius stood firm. You're not better. You're broken. The clone moved like lightning. Fists slammed into metal. Darius dodged, barely. Every hit was powerful. One wrong move, and he'd die. But Darius didn't fight with brute force. He fought with purpose. He kicked a pipe, releasing steam into the clone's face, then grabbed a broken rod from the floor and stabbed it into its side. Sparks flew. The clone screamed, glitching. Zara ran to the console. Her small fingers flew across the controls. I can disable his pain filter. Do it, Darius shouted. Blocking another attack dot with one final code, she hit enter. The clone froze, shook violently, then collapsed. Steam rose from its mouth. It was over. Breathing hard, Darius looked at Zara. Where did you learn to do that? She stared at him for a long moment, then said something that shook him to the core. I was built to serve him, but I chose you. Darius's voice was quiet. What do you mean? Zara walked over to a small side terminal. She opened a hidden drawer and took out a file. This place, she said, is where they made us, me, and others like me. The file showed Zara's face, but the name on it stopped Darius's heart. Zara Kane Kodo for ex-child, DNA match, Darius Kane. He dropped to his knees. She was not just any child. She was his daughter. Tears filled his eyes for the first time in years. His voice cracked. They used me. Zara knelt beside him. They tried to erase us, but they failed. He held her hand, tight. Never again, I promise. Back on the command deck, Vertok stared at the data feed. Subject Victor 13 has failed. A new officer spoke, and the girl, she's not just a test subject, she's a Kane. Vertok's eyes narrowed. Prepare the butcher of Vaganine. If Darius Kane wants a war, let's give him one. Deep inside the damaged ship, Darius and Zara walked away from the ruined lab, side by side. He whispered to her, no more cages, no more lies. She looked up and smiled, her eyes shining. And together, they walked into the fire. The news spread across the ship like wildfire. Victor 13 was dead. The clone had failed. The human, Darius Kane, was still alive. But this time, the aliens didn't. Panicked. They laughed, because someone new had arrived. Someone they believed could do what no soldier, no clone, no scientist had done. They had called the butcher of Vaganine. His name was General Cractal, a warlord who wore a suit of armor made from bones, human bones. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, his arms as thick as tree trunks, his eyes cold as ice. He had destroyed colonies, burned forests, and crushed rebellions to the alien empire. He was a hero to humans. He was a nightmare. Cracktol stepped off the dropship and cracked his knuckles. One ghost? He growled against a god. He smiled. This would be fun. Meanwhile, Darius and Zara hid in the lower cargo hold. They had only a few minutes to rest. The fight with Victor 13 had drained. Then both Zara curled up in the corner, her head on her knees. I thought it would be over, she whispered. I thought you'd kill the clone, and they'd stop chasing us. Darius looked at her and shook his head slowly. No, the Empire doesn't stop. It escalates. He checked the stolen weapon. From one of the guards, a plasma rifle, cracked, but still working. He had seen what came next. When they lose control, he said, they send monsters. As if on cue, the lights above flickered. A heavy metallic sound echoed from the upper decks. Step. Pause. Step. Pause. Darius felt that something had entered the ship, and it was coming. On the command deck, Vertok watched his monitor with cold eyes. Let's see what happens when the ghost meets the butcher. Cameras all over the ship tracked Cracktol's slow march toward the lower levels. Zara looked up as the metal around them began to vibrate. What is that? She asked. Darius didn't answer. He already knew. Cracktol didn't sneak. He didn't hide. He wanted to be heard. He wanted the human to feel fear, to know death was walking his way. Darius came. He roared down the corridor. His voice echoed through the pipes and vents. I've waited years to rip you apart. Darius stood and helped Zara up. Stay behind me, no matter what. Zara nodded, but her hands were shaking. They stepped into the hallway and saw him. Cracktol stood tall at the other end, holding a hammer bigger than Zara herself. His armor was marked with blood, old and new. His eyes locked on Darius. So, Cracktol said, grinning, the ghost lives. Darius didn't blink. Not for long. If I stand here listening to you talk. Cracktol growled and charged. The hallway shook as the butcher ran forward. Darius fired the plasma rifle 3 times. Cracktol blocked it with his arm. The blasts bouncing off his armor. Darius dropped the rifle. Hand to hand it was. The two giants collided like thunder. Cracktol swung the hammer, and Darius barely rolled aside. The floor cracked where it hit. Darius punched him in the ribs. Nothing. Kicked his knee. Cracktol didn't even flinch. You're slower than I expected, Darius muttered. And you're lighter than your legend. Cracktol snarled. They kept fighting, blow after blow. Sparks flew. Blood hit the walls. Darius was strong, but Cracktol was a tank. Every hit from him felt like a bomb. But Darius had something Cracktol didn't, precision. He let Cracktol swing again and dodged just enough. Then he pulled a small detonator from his belt and slapped it onto Cracktol's back armor. Let's end this, Darius whispered. He kicked Cracktol into the wall and hit the switch. Boom! The explosion was small, but perfect. It tore the armor on Cracktol's back and knocked him to his knees. Darius didn't waste a second. He jumped forward, grabbed the fallen hammer, and slammed it down on Cracktol's chest. The butcher gasped. Blood spilled from his mouth. His body twitched. Then he lay still. For the first time ever, Cracktol the great warrior, the terror of Veganine, was dead. Zara ran to Darius. Are you okay? He was bleeding from his lip, his shoulder dislocated, but he smiled. I'm still standing, he said. That's more than he can say. Zara looked down at the lifeless warlord. He was the one who destroyed Veganine, right? Darius nodded. He didn't just destroy it. He broadcasted it live. She stared at the corpse. Good. On the command deck, the silence was deafening. VO or single quotes. TAAK slammed his fist into the table. He killed Cracktol. Officers looked at each other in fear. Sir, the crew is panicking. They're calling him something now. What? Vertok snapped. The officer swallowed hard. They call him the Shadow King, because no one sees him until it's too late. Vertok stared at the screen. Then he whispered, so be it. He turned to the control panel and activated a dark button. Initiate protocol Blackfall. Far below, Darius and Zara stood over Cracktol's body. Zara asked softly, what now? Darius looked toward the center of the ship. We burned their lives to the ground. The hall was still. The butcher of Veganine lay broken on the metal floor. His hammer rested at Darius's feet, silent now, like a war god who had lost his voice. Zara stood beside Darius, quiet and wide-eyed. She had seen death before. She had lived in tubes surrounded by it. But this was something else. You killed him, she whispered. The monster from the stories. The one who burned the Earth colonies. Darius didn't answer. He only stared down the corridor ahead, where darkness stretched like an open mouth. Something deeper pulled at him. Something that had been waiting since the day he woke up from cryo-sleep. A strange voice echoed from the speakers this time. Not an alien voice. A human one.female.com. Familiar. Welcome to Core Sector 01. Captain Darius Kane. Identity confirmed. Doors unlocking. Zara turned to him, puzzled. That voice. It knew you. Darius's face changed. His jaw tightened. He said nothing, but his steps grew faster as the metal doors at the end of the hallway slid open on their own. They entered. What they found inside changed everything. The room was unlike anything else on the ship. Clean, white, high-tech, human. Design not alien, screens floated in midair, soft lights glowed from glass walls. And in the center of it all was a chair. Not just any chair. A control throne, shaped for a human body, connected to thousands of neural wires. Glowing softly in red dots, there stood frozen. I know this place, she whispered. But I've never been here. Darius looked around slowly. It was a command center built by humans but hijacked by aliens. His old team used to whisper about a secret room like this, a place created before the war ended. A last hope. On the wall, a large screen turned on. A recording began. Darius's own face appeared. Younger, full of fire. If you're seeing this, it means you survived cryo-sleep. That means the war is still going, or the Empire won. Either way, I left something behind. Darius stepped closer. Zara watched the video, stunned. The child. You'll find her eventually. She's not a weapon. She's your second chance. The recording flickered. Then ended. Darius turned to Zara. I didn't know, he said softly. They must have taken my DNA, made you without my permission. Zara stepped back, her voice trembling. So, I was a test. A lab project? No, Darius said quickly. You were stolen from me, but you are still mine. Tears rolled down her cheeks. They told me I was made to obey, made to fight. But I don't want to fight. I just wanted to know who I am. She walked toward the control chair, and it responded. The wires began to glow blue instead of red. The room shifted. And then it happened. The walls slid open, revealing more pods. Inside them were children, dozens of them, some young, some in their teens, all asleep, all like Zara. Human. Connected. Waiting. Zara placed her hand on the control panel. They're like me, she said, but I can feel something else. I can feel them inside my head. Darius looked at the children. They kept them hidden even from the alien command. Zara nodded slowly because they were scared. These kids, they don't just hold tech inside them. They're all connected, like one big mind. She turned toward Darius. I'm not just your daughter, she said. I'm the key. Meanwhile, in the upper decks, Vertok stared at the massive energy spike coming from Core Sector 01. His second-in-command panicked. Sir, there's a neural activation. Every system is responding. The child, she's in the throne. Vertok's face turned pale. That throne was not meant to be used. She's using it. Back in the core, Zara's eyes turned pure white for a second. The lights dimmed, then surged. The ship's engines began to hum at a new frequency. Alarms across the fleet triggered without being touched. Zara turned to Darius again. I can shut the ship down. I can set everyone free, but I need your help. What do you need? He asked. She pointed to a panel with a red lever. This ship still has one last command system, one that requires your DNA, father and daughter, together. Darius walked to her. Let's finish this. Together, they placed their hands on the activation pad. A soft chime echoed. Dual command confirmed. Neural override initiated. The floating screens began to flash one by one, showing security doors unlocking, gravity fields failing, AI voices shutting down. Zara turned toward the pods. They'll wake up soon, she said. But when they do, we need to be ready. They'll be scared, like I was. Darius looked at her with pride. You'll lead them. I'll protect them. Outside the core, heavy footsteps began again. Not Crackle, not a clone. Something worse. A large figure with black armor and red eyes moved through the ship. Vertok's voice echoed in its helmet. If they control the ship, they control the fleet. Kill the child. Bring me the ghost's head. And the doors to Core Sector 01 began to open again. A low, Heavy sound rumbled through the ship like thunder underwater. Boom, boom, boom. The hallway outside core sector 01 vibrated with every step of the thing that was coming. Zara looked up from the control chair, her breath catching. What is that? Darius loaded a plasma blade from the emergency rack beside the wall. Something the Empire didn't even want to name. The doors began to open, slowly, with pressure, like something powerful was pushing them apart, ignoring the lock codes. And then it stepped inside. A tall figure in pitch black armor, red veins of energy pulsed across its suit. Its helmet had no face, only a shining red slit like a single burning. It wasn't just a soldier. It was a Hunter Prime, a living weapon. The final layer of the Empire's fear. Vertak's voice echoed from the speakers. You activated the human protocol. Captain Kane, you stole our ship. You woke our secrets. Now you die with them. The Hunter Prime raised its arm. A long, curved blade slid out from under its wrist, glowing with a poisonous green light. Zara stood up from the chair, but Darius stepped in front of her. No, he said. You've done your part. I'll handle this. Zara opened her mouth to speak, but then froze. The other children in the pods were waking up, one by one, eyes opening, fingers moving. Their minds connected to Zara were stirring. Zara gripped the console and whispered, I can't protect them if he kills you. You won't have to, Darius said. I've trained my whole life for this moment. The fight began instantly. The Hunter Prime moved like lightning. Its blade slashed through the air, missing Darius by inches. Darius countered with a sharp stab of the plasma blade, but the Hunter deflected it with its arm. Metal against energy, man against machine. The room shook with every hit. Zara rushed to the side console, fingers flying over controls. She activated command override, human protocol, all over the ship. The chains began. Turrets turned off, shields dropped, doors unlocked. Other warships in the fleet received a sudden signal, one they hadn't heard in centuries. Terran override confirmed. Command control relinked. Aboard 5 alien warships surrounding the trails and vortex. Lights changed from red to blue. Autopilot shut off. Old human programming buried under layers of alien code was waking up. Pilots screamed. Their screens blinked. Human protocol active. Follow core signal. Zara's signal was the core signal. She wasn't just a child. She was the key to the Terran legacy network. Back inside the core room, the battle raged on. Darius was bleeding, his armor torn, his shoulder again dislocated, but he refused to stop. Every time the Hunter struck, Darius ducked lower, moved faster, got smarter. But the Hunter was still winning, until Darius did something unexpected. He ran around the edge of the room, circling. Why is he running? Zara asked. Then she saw. Darius had dropped a small explosive device every few feet, and now he hit the detonator. Boom. The floor cracked. One of the power columns exploded. Fire spilled upward. The Hunter Prime staggered off balance for the first time. Darius charged, plasma blade in hand. He slashed the Hunter's knee joint, cutting wires. The Hunter dropped to one knee. Then Darius jumped on its back, drove the blade deep into the gap in its armor, and twisted. The Hunter screamed with a sound that shook the walls. And then, silence. It dropped. Darius collapsed beside it, gasping. Zara ran to him. Are you okay? He coughed. I'll live. She looked back at the console. The other children, now fully awake, were looking around, scared and confused. I can speak to them, Zara whispered, all at once, through the neural field. Darius nodded. Then tell them the truth. Tell them they're free. Zara closed her eyes. And began to speak, not out loud, but through her thoughts. All the children heard her. You are not tools. You are not weapons. You are human, and you are free now. The room filled with emotion. Some kids cried. Some held their heads. One boy asked, is Earth real? Zara looked at Darius. He smiled faintly. Yes, she told them, and we're going there. Up above, chaos had taken over the alien command fleet. Warships now responded to Zara's signal, not Vertak's. One ship turned and fired on another. Others began to eject alien crews into space. The Empire's own tools were destroying. And from within, Vertak screamed in rage. Give me a direct shot at the core. I'll blow that girl to dust. But his systems replied, access denied. Authority, human protocol. He stood frozen for the first time in decades. He was powerless. Back in the core room, Zara looked at Darius. They'll come again. Maybe not today, but someday. Darius stood up, shaky but proud. Then we'll teach these children to fight. Not with fear, but with strength, with heart. Zara nodded, and we'll make sure the galaxy never forgets what they did to us. He placed a hand on her shoulder. We are not ghosts anymore. A new screen lit up. Destination, Earth signal located. Set course, Zara smiled. Yes. And the ship turned. The stars blurred outside the window as the trails and vortex, now under Zara's command, moved at light speed. Behind it, the alien fleet had collapsed into disarray. Their warships turned against one another. Entire command centers went dark. The galaxy was shifting, and it all began with one cryo-unit opening. Zara stood at the center of the control deck, barefoot on the metal floor, wires still glowing from the neural link in her wrist. Dozens of human children rescued and waking stood quietly behind her. Some held each other. Others held tools, training weapons, and tablets. They were not just survivors. They were the future of Earth. Darius Kane stood beside her, patched up and armored again, though he walked with a limp now. His eyes scanned the stars, his hand resting on the old plasma blade at his hip. Is it really Earth? One child asked from behind. Zara smiled and nodded. Signal is confirmed. Old Terran beacon. Planet still alive, still breathing. The children smiled, many for the first time, but far behind them, in the darkness of the collapsing empire, Vertok wasn't done. The supreme commander of the Ovrak Empire had activated a final backup protocol, a failsafe only he could access. It was called the Judgment Star, an unmanned weapon the size of a moon, hidden near Earth's orbit since the end of the war. It wasn't just a bomb. It was a message. One last act of destruction. Vor single quotes TAAK spoke to his officers coldly. If they reach Earth and show the galaxy what we've done, they'll unite against us. Burn it. Burn everything. Back on the trails and vortex, alarms rang. Zara turned quickly. There's something ahead of us. No life signs, but it's massive. Darius's face grew pale. Show me. The star map zoomed in, and there it was. A metal sphere half the size of Earth's moon. No windows. No doors, just a red ring pulsing around it. Zara's voice dropped. What is that? Darius whispered. The Judgment Star. He had heard about it in war briefings before the fall. He thought it was just a rumor, a doomsday weapon, a final warning to anyone who dared resist the Empire. But it was real. And now, it was charging. Inside the Judgment Star, automated systems came alive. Energy filled the core. Plasma fields warmed. The target was locked. Destination, Earth. Countdown, 10 minutes. Zara looked at the screen. We can't outrun it. It'll fire before we even land. Darius stared at the star and said, Then we don't run. The children behind them listened silently. Darius stepped forward and tapped the console. Zara, you still control the Terran fleet? Yes. Then give me the ships. She paused. What are you going to do? Finish what we started. 5 ships recovered through the human protocol and cloaked from the edge of deep space. They had once belonged to the Terran resistance. Now, their systems obeyed Zara. Darius split them into attack formation. He turned to the children. Stay. On this ship, protect each other. Protect Zara. If I don't come back, Zara cut him off. You will. He gave her a small nod. Then he stepped into the dropship bay boarding a Terran combat ship now under his command. The 5 Terran ships raced toward the Judgment Star. Inside the star, systems recognized the threat. Enemy presence detected. Defensive shields online. But the human protocol still lived inside the old war code. As Darius approached, he activated an ancient override. Code. Ghost Unit 07. The Judgment Star hesitated. Just for a second. It was enough. The Terran ships opened fire. Blue streaks of plasma cut across the sky. Darius's ship led the charge, diving through defense fields, dodging mines, rolling through flak explosions. He found the weak point, a massive vent channel, near the rear thrusters. Old design, poorly hidden. He aimed directly for it, on the trails and vortex. Zara watched the screen in silence. She could feel Darius's heartbeat through the neural link she shared with him. It was fast. Strong. Until the very end. Darius flew straight into the vent, dodging red fire. He opened the bay doors of his ship and dropped one last bomb into the heart of the Judgment Star. Then he whispered into the calm, Tell her I said. She was never a mistake. Boom. A light brighter than the sun exploded in space. The Judgment Star shattered into pieces. The shockwave lit up the dark side of the Earth like a new moon. Back on the vortex, Zara dropped to her knees. The children, surrounded her, unsure what happened. She didn't speak. She just stared at the screen. No signal. No heartbeat. Nothing. And then a voice. Did you really think I'd missed the landing? Zara gasped and turned. A battered escape pod slammed into the side docking bay. The door burst open. Darius Kane stepped out, armor cracked, hair burnt, still alive. Zara ran to him. She hugged him tightly. You came back. He knelt down. I always will. Hours later, the ship landed softly on Earth's surface. Green fields, blue oceans, open skies. A group of old survivors watched from a mountaintop. One of them wiped tears from his eyes. They said humanity was dead. Another replied, then who the hell are they? The ship doors opened. Zara stepped out first, holding a new flag. Behind her walked Darius Kane. And behind him, the future. The Empire would remember this day forever. The day they opened Cryo Unit 9. The day they woke a ghost. And the day they regretted everything.